All right, so let's dive right in. And hey, while you're here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like if you're finding this interesting. Okay, so imagine this. It's President's Day, a day we usually, use to think about past leaders. But this year, things are looking a little different. All across the country, we're seeing thousands of people choosing to mark the occasion, not with celebrations, but with protests.
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? President's Day, a day for remembering and looking back, but it's becoming the backdrop for protests, very current protests against, what the current president is doing.
And you know what's really interesting? A lot of these protests are happening in some pretty symbolic places, like right near the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C.
Gathering on the National Mall right there, steps away from the center of power. That's a strong statement. It shows how determined these protesters are, to get their message across to the government.
And here's another thing. A lot of these protesters, they're using traditional patriotic symbols. You see American flags waving, you hear the national anthem. It kind of pushes back against the idea that they're anti-American, which some people might say.
Right. They want to take back those symbols, redefine what it means to be patriotic, especially right now. They feel like what they're doing is protecting American values, values that they think are threatened by the current administration.
There's this really powerful quote from one of the protesters, Sean Morris. He's the president of the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C. He sang the national anthem of the D.C. protest, and he said, "It's our anthem, it's our flag, it belongs to us. We wanted to take it back."
Wow. I mean, that really sums up the feeling behind these protests, right? This feeling that people are being pushed aside, that their voices, their vision of America isn't being heard.
So what are the issues that are making people protest? Well, there are a lot of them. It's a mix of anxieties and frustrations. People are protesting things like federal workers being fired, certain people getting appointed to powerful positions, decisions about foreign policy that they don't like, and even worries about possible breaking of laws.
Yeah, and you can feel the frustration both with the president and with Congress. Protesters feel ignored, like no one's listening. You can hear it in their chants, things like, "Where is Congress? Do your job."
And it's important to realize that these protests aren't limited to any one place or political group. They're happening all over the country, from places that are usually liberal, like New York and Massachusetts, to places that are more conservative, like Virginia, California, Arkansas, Georgia, and even Texas.
The fact that these rallies are happening in such different places with different kinds of people, it shows how widespread this discontent is. It's something that goes beyond the usual political divides.
And if you look at the signs the protesters are carrying, you see the whole range of what they're worried about. Some say, "Stop the coup, no billionaire kings, fight fascism everywhere." And some are really personal, like one who just said, "Donald Trump stole my job."
The slogans get right to the heart of it, don't they? The fear that power is being taken away, the worry about how much influence the rich and powerful have, and the real effects that the president's policies are having on people's lives, their wallets.
One protester, Kristen Jen, she spoke at the rally in Austin, Texas. She told her story about losing her job with the National Park Service because of budget cuts. She talked about how scary it is to think about needing government assistance, especially when you've always been able to take care of yourself.
Her story really puts a face on all the worry around this plan, Project 2025, a plan that has a lot of federal employees feeling really nervous. Yeah, Project 2025, it's like at the center of why people are so worried and protesting. It's basically this plan, this blueprint for, if a Republican president gets elected in the future, how they could completely change the federal government.
Right, and it's been gaining a lot of attention lately, especially among conservatives. But I guess to understand why everyone's so worked up about it, we need to break down what it actually says, what it wants to do.
Well, the main idea behind Project 2025 is to make the federal government a lot smaller, less powerful. They want to shrink departments, maybe even get rid of some agencies completely, and possibly have private companies do some of the things the government does now.
And that's where people start to freak out, right? They get really worried about what these big changes would mean, for things like essential services, people losing their jobs, and just the overall role of government in people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, those are valid concerns. People who don't like the plan, they worry that privatizing everything could make things less accountable, less transparent. It could mean services cost more, and people, especially those who depend on government programs, might not be able to get what they need.
And it's not just about losing jobs, is it? I mean, there's also this worry that the government will lose a lot of expertise if all the experienced civil servants are replaced.
Exactly. Project 2025, it wants to move away from relying on career civil servants, people who've been working in government for a long time. Instead, they want to appoint people who are aligned with their political views. So you have this concern about conflicts of interest, about losing all that knowledge and experience, and whether these new appointees would really be serving the public or just the administration that put them there.
So it's like we're seeing this battle of ideas, right? A debate about what the government should even be, what it should do. People who support Project 2025, they think the federal government has just gotten way too big, too inefficient, too involved in people's lives and businesses.
Right, but then you have people on the other side who say a strong, well-functioning government is absolutely essential, to protect the public, to make sure society is fair, to provide those crucial services that so many people depend on. They see the government not as some obstacle, but as a vital tool for helping the most vulnerable and making life better for all citizens.
And these protests we're seeing, they're like that struggle playing out in the streets. People are coming together to say, hey, we don't want this vision for our country.
Yeah, it's a reminder that democracy isn't just something you watch from the sidelines. It's about getting involved, having those tough conversations, and making sure those in power are answerable to the people.
Exactly. It reminds us that the things the government does have real effects on people's everyday lives. And those people have every right to speak up when those decisions affect them.
And the fact that these protests are drawing such diverse crowds, people from all walks of life with different beliefs, it suggests that a lot of people relate to these anxieties and frustrations.
Right? It's not just about one policy or one president. It's about the core of American society, the values we believe in, and the future we want to build together.
So now the question is, will these protests make a real difference? Will the people in power actually listen to what's being said and have a real discussion about where this country is headed?
Or will they just ignore it, brush it aside as, just a small group of unhappy people, a little bit of noise that'll eventually go away?
It's hard to say what will happen in the long run, but one thing's for sure. These protests have brought a sense of urgency, of passion to the national conversation. It's a reminder that democracy is always changing. It's a process, and we have to stay involved, stay vigilant.
And it kind of makes you wonder, right? Are these protests like a turning point? Or are they, a sign that our country is becoming even more divided?
It's tough to say. It's complicated, but you can't deny it. There's this huge wave of energy, of concern among Americans, and they're speaking up, making sure their voices are heard.
Yeah, it's a reminder that democracy isn't just this thing that exists. It's something we have to keep working at. It takes all of us getting involved, talking to each other, and holding those in power accountable.
It's like a wake-up call, reminding us to stay informed, to talk about these things in a way that makes sense, and to work together for a future where everyone feels like their voice matters, like they're respected.
These protests, they've definitely lit a fire. There's a sense of urgency, a renewed focus on what our democracy is really about. Will this turn into a real movement, a force for change, or will it just fade away? It's hard to say.
It is, but one thing's clear. These protests have shown us how powerful it can be when people come together, and they've reminded us how important it is to keep talking about the kind of country we want, to keep that conversation going.
It's been really fascinating exploring all of this with you.
Yeah, it's been great.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you learned something new today. We'll see you next time.